We all know people who are generous, caring, and decent. But history, and psychology, show us something disturbing. Even the best among us can transform into someone we no longer recognize. This isn't a fictional horror story. It's real, and it's happened more times than we care to admit. What if I told you that this transformation isn't random or rare? That there's a predictable pattern behind it? A terrifying blueprint that explains how good people get pulled into darkness. In this video, we're not just exploring human nature, we're cracking it open. You'll discover the hidden mechanisms that push ordinary people to do the unthinkable. And more importantly, you'll learn how to protect yourself from becoming one of them. Because this isn't just about what they did. It's about what you might do, under the right pressure, in the wrong situation. At the heart of what Dr. Philip Zimbardo calls the Lucifer Effect. The term may sound religious, but its meaning is rooted in psychology. Zimbardo borrowed the name from the story of Lucifer, the most radiant of angels, who, through pride and rebellion, fell from heaven and became Satan. Not because he was born evil but because of circumstances, choices, and transformation. That's the key idea. The Lucifer Effect describes how good people can turn evil, not from some inner corruption, but from being placed in corrupt environments. It's about the situational forces that twist morality, blur ethics, and push ordinary people to commit extraordinary cruelty. We like to think that evil wears a mask, that it's obvious that it belongs to those people. But Zimbardo argued something far more terrifying. Evil can look like you. Like me. Like the neighbor who waters their plants, the teacher who smiles at their students, or the soldier who believes they're serving justice, until they're told to follow orders that break souls. The Lucifer Effect is not just a theory, it's a mirror. It reflects what humans are capable of when systems of power, peer pressure, and psychological manipulation take hold. And it's not rare. It's everywhere, hidden in experiments, in prisons, in wars, in offices, in schools, even in the internet comment sections where anonymity breeds hostility. So before we judge those who've fallen, we have to ask, how close are we to falling ourselves? And that's where the story truly begins. It's August 1971. Deep in the basement of Stanford University, an ordinary psychology lab is transformed into something far darker, a mock prison. Dr. Philip Zimbardo has one haunting question in mind. What happens when you put good people in a bad place? To answer this, he selects 24 healthy, average college students, no psychological issues, no criminal records, and randomly assigns them roles of either guard or prisoner. It's just a simulation, expected to last 2 weeks, with students paid $15 a day. No one had any idea how quickly things would spiral out of control. At first, it's just play acting. Guards are handed mirrored sunglasses, military-style uniforms, and wooden batons. Prisoners are arrested at home by real police officers, stripped, deloused, and forced to wear smocks with ID numbers in place of their names. But within just 24 hours, the lines between role and reality begin to blur. The guards start asserting their power, not with violence, but with humiliation. They force prisoners to do push-ups at 2 a.m., deny them blankets, and impose meaningless, degrading punishments. The cruelty doesn't come from orders, it comes from the environment. By day 3, the experiment descends into psychological torment. One prisoner begins screaming and crying uncontrollably and has to be released. Others grow depressed, passive, and disturbingly obedient. The guards become increasingly sadistic, using isolation and mental manipulation to assert dominance. No one told them to act this way, they simply adapted to the roles they were given. Even Zimbardo, acting as the prison superintendent, loses his objectivity. He allows the abuse to escalate until a young outsider, psychologist Christina Maslach, confronts him in horror, asking, "What you're doing to these boys?" That question snaps Zimbardo back to reality, and the experiment is abruptly shut down after only 6 days. So what did it prove? The Stanford Prison Experiment revealed that evil isn't always loud or obvious. It can emerge slowly, quietly, and systematically. Good people don't need to be broken to do bad things, they just need the right conditions. The guards in the experiment weren't inherently cruel. The power of the uniform, the authority of the role, and the lack of accountability transformed them. The prisoners weren't weak, they were trapped in a system that stripped them of identity and hope. And perhaps the most terrifying truth of all, none of the guards quit. None of them stood up to stop the abuse. Because when the system is designed to dehumanize, even the best of us can forget our own humanity. If someone commits a terrible act, our first instinct is to look inside them for answers. We ask, what kind of person would do that? But what if that's the wrong question? Dr. Philip Zimbardo, the same mind behind the Stanford Prison Experiment, challenges this idea. He says evil isn't always about who a person is but where that person is, what role they've been given, and what system surrounds them. It's called the situational perspective. Instead of blaming personality, what psychologists call dispositional thinking, Zimbardo urges us to look at the environment, social pressure, and authority structures that can shape our behavior. This is not a new idea. During the Holocaust trials, one of the most chilling revelations came from Adolf Eichmann, a man who helped organize the logistics of mass murder. When asked why he did it, he didn't say, "Because I'm evil." He said, "I was just following orders." That's not a defense. It's a window into how ordinary people can become tools of extraordinary evil. And it brings us to one of the most uncomfortable truths in psychology. You don't have to be a bad person to do bad things. You just have to be in the wrong place, under the wrong authority, at the wrong time. Let's break down the psychological forces that make this transformation possible. In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted one of the most shocking experiments in history. Participants were told to administer electric shocks to a person in another room, who was actually an actor. As the shocks increased in intensity, the actor screamed, begged, and eventually fell silent. And yet 65% of people kept going, simply because an authority figure told them to. Why? Because authority carries power. We're taught to obey, to trust uniforms, to follow orders, and in doing so, we surrender moral responsibility. When people lose their sense of identity, through uniforms, masks, or being part of a group, they also lose accountability. This is called deindividuation. Think about violent mobs. People smash windows, loot stores, even hurt others, not as individuals, but as part of a faceless crowd. They stop thinking as me and start thinking as we. And in that shift, the rules change. In a group setting, people often assume that someone else will do the right thing. This is why bystanders may watch a person being assaulted or bullied and do nothing. Responsibility becomes spread out, and as a result, no one acts. This effect becomes deadly in bureaucracies, militaries, and corporations. Everyone follows the procedure. No one questions the morality. We are social creatures. We want to belong. But that desire comes with a cost. In tightly controlled environments, like cults, prisons, or even boardrooms, people will ignore their own values to avoid standing out. They agree with the group. They silence their doubts. Not because they believe it's right but because it feels safer than speaking up. So what do all these psychological forces mean? It means that evil isn't some rare trait. It's a potential, one that lies dormant in all of us. And under the right pressure, with the right triggers, even someone kind, generous, and moral can cross the line. That's what the Lucifer Effect teaches us. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes, it looks like the person in the mirror, wearing a uniform, holding a clipboard, following the rules. But there's hope. Because the same psychology that pushes us toward cruelty can also push us toward courage. And we'll explore that in the final chapters. It's easy to study experiments in a lab and feel disconnected. But the Lucifer Effect doesn't just live in theories or academic papers. It's very real. And it has played out in the lives of ordinary people, your neighbors, your coworkers, people who once held baby photos in their wallets and later held whips, rifles, or power over others' suffering. Let's start with one of the most disturbing and well-documented cases, Abu Ghraib prison, Iraq, 2003. U.S. soldiers, young men and women from everyday backgrounds, were tasked with guarding Iraqi detainees. Many had no previous experience with war crimes, cruelty, or violence. Some were just weeks out of basic training. But when placed in a chaotic environment, under vague orders, with a lack of oversight, something changed. Photos leaked. And what they showed shocked the world. Prisoners stacked naked in pyramids, hooded with wires attached to their bodies, forced into sexual poses, taunted by laughing American soldiers. One soldier, Lindy England, became the face of the scandal, posing next to a prisoner on a leash like it was a joke. When questioned, many guards said the same thing. We were told to soften them up. I didn't think it was wrong, everyone else was doing it. Lindy wasn't a sadist. She had no criminal history. She grew up in a quiet town in West Virginia. But in Abu Ghraib, she didn't see people. She saw enemies, numbers, obstacles. That's the Lucifer Effect in motion. Let's go back further, to Rwanda, 1994. Over the course of just 100 days, nearly 800,000 people were murdered in the Rwandan genocide. Who did the killing? Not soldiers. Not trained killers. Farmers. Schoolteachers. Taxi drivers. Shopkeepers. They picked up machetes, turned on their neighbors, and slaughtered them. Why? Because propaganda told them Tutsis were cockroaches. Because the radio dehumanized them. Because the government whispered, "It's them or you." These were men who once shared drinks with their victims. Mothers who once nursed their children side by side. And under fear, hate, and pressure, they became monsters. Or take Adolf Eichmann, a Nazi bureaucrat. He never pulled a trigger. He never set foot in a gas chamber. He simply organized the trains that transported Jews to their deaths. In 1961, at his trial in Jerusalem, he appeared calm, composed, almost boring. No horns. No rage. Just a man in a suit who said, "I was following orders." Philosopher Hannah Arendt attended his trial and famously coined the phrase, "the banality of evil." She meant that evil doesn't always come dressed in black, laughing maniacally. Sometimes, it wears glasses, carries a clipboard, and goes home to a wife and kids. Even in modern times, we see echoes of the Lucifer Effect. Corporate executives who make decisions that knowingly harm millions, approving addictive drugs, ignoring faulty safety protocols, destroying the environment, not out of hatred, but because that's the system. Online trolls, hiding behind anonymous usernames, say things they would never dare say in public, pushing others to depression or suicide. Gang initiates, once shy and kind, become hardened to violence because it's the only way to survive where they live. Police officers, trained to protect, cross the line during high-pressure situations, and sometimes, a life is lost in a single second of power gone unchecked. These are not cartoons. They're people, like you, like me. The terrifying truth is this: under the right conditions, the monster doesn't have to come from outside. Sometimes it grows inside. But if that's the case, is there any hope? There is. Because just as systems can corrupt, they can also be redesigned to protect. And just as psychology can lead us into darkness, it can also guide us toward light. In the next chapter, we'll explore what it really takes to resist the Lucifer Effect, and whether you would have the strength to say no when everyone else is saying yes. It's tempting to believe that we're different. That we would never act like that guard at Abu Ghraib. That we would have resisted the mob in Rwanda. That we would have stood up in Nazi Germany, in the Stanford basement, in the boardroom, in the prison. But here's the question you must confront: are you sure? Because the science says maybe not. According to decades of psychological research, most people, not some, not a few, but most, will conform to authority, obey orders, and stay silent when evil unfolds in front of them. Not because they're bad, but because they're human. Think about your daily life. Have you ever laughed at a cruel joke just to fit in? Have you stayed silent when someone was being treated unfairly? Have you ever followed instructions that didn't sit right with you, just because someone in power told you to? These small decisions may seem harmless. But they come from the same psychological roots that, when amplified by pressure, fear, or groupthink, can grow into something much darker. Here's the real kicker: no one wakes up thinking, "Today, I'll become the villain. They think, I'm just doing my job. I don't want to cause trouble. It's not my place to say anything. Everyone else is okay with it. These are the silent seeds of surrender. And they grow quickly in environments where obedience is rewarded and questioning is punished. Dr. Zimbardo once said, the people who committed horrific abuses were not inherently evil. They were normal people, corrupted by the power of the situation. And that's what makes the Lucifer effect so terrifying. It doesn't target monsters. It preys on the everyday. On kindness. On obedience. On the desire to belong. So ask yourself, if you were given a badge, a mask, title, would you stay the same person underneath? If a respected voice told you, this is necessary, would you question it? If everyone around you was doing it, would you resist, or would you just blend in? Because the truth is, we all like to imagine we'd be the hero. But in the wrong place, under the wrong pressures, at the wrong time, the line between good and evil is not a wall, it's a tightrope. And we all walk it, every day.